Damn, finish line. You made it. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and we can hear you.
Oh,
I'm so excited. So for those of you that are just joining, good morning. Welcome to the Coffee Table Talks with our very special guest, Chris Golden, who 5 seconds ago we were super concerned we were not going to be able to see or talk to.
But, you may want to hear me. You may not want to see me. So
no, it's a great sight to see you. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Normally we hang out for a few minutes and then you meet Will, but we'll do that now. That's fine. We can do that now. So Chris Golden, Will McCullen, Chris Golden.
Howdy.
Will, you want to talk about the Ite Center of Excellence and all the fun stuff?
Yeah, so just real quick, and Rachel's so kind to let me continually put this out there. I'm with PIMA Community College, and we are working on a Ite Center of Excellence, which also includes the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, which is a group out of Phoenix that has all sorts of interesting connections with three-letter acronyms. And so we are creating an area that has a student-run data center, a CSOC, and a fusion space, all where they can learn the best practices on one side and then go over to the cyber range and break it. So that's a nutshell of what we're doing. So a pleasure to meet you, Chris.
Thank you.
What are you about?
There you go.
Yeah, so Chris Golden here. I'm a retired Air Force colonel. Did a couple decades in uniform, mainly in the cockpit, but a lot of cyber stuff as well. Undergraduate computer science, first master's, sort of a computer science kind of thing. Retired and went to work for Wall Street doing cybersecurity for them, trying to get them straight and thing. And now I've moved over to healthcare, protecting private health information. So I run cybersecurity for Blue Cross Blue Shield right now in sort of my real world. And in my other free time, I've been involved with the CMMC program since its inception, with the industry day the DoD held almost a year and a half ago, last November in 2019, not 2020. Formed the working groups, led 3 of those working groups. Then we formed the board, became a board member for the CMMC-AB, developed the training, delivered the training to a little over 100 provisional assessors, plus a number of people from DCMA DIBCAP, who will be doing assessments on various entities in the ecosystem. Heavily involved with the methodology for the assessments, as well as the certification of assessors and C3POs and instructors and everything else that's going to be part of the ecosystem. And did that until Wednesday. And then for a lot of different reasons, decided that my time was up. And so I resigned my board seat and now back into the regular civilian world and letting the AB press on forward. And hopefully I've set it up for success. We'll see.
Yeah.
Wow, you've given that explanation a few times. I can tell.
That's my new elevator pitch. When people ask me for jobs, I go into that pitch, and then I wonder why I don't get a job. So
I was like, that's a mouthful. That's a lot of mouthful. So, okay. So how did you get involved with the CMMC board? He goes, look, I'm real Southern. You got to talk real slow.
Yeah, not a problem. It's like talking with people in the Army. Small words, talk slow. So the DoD released an RFI, a request for information, about the CMMC accreditation body back in October of 2019. And I got a copy of that through, I think it was called Fez Biz Ops. I can't remember what the name of it now is, but basically where the government puts all their sort of contracts that they're going to have open to bid. And so I read through that. I do some consulting in the third-party risk management space on the side as sort of my side hustle. And I thought, ooh, this is sort of in my lane. I've created third-party risk management solutions before for large companies. I'm a patriot. I think I want to get involved in this. And so the DoD asked for maximum 10-page white papers on sort of how to do this. And so I was one of 41 entities that's submitted a white paper to the DoD in response to the RFI. I think they were a little overwhelmed. And so they held an industry day in November of 2019 and to bring everybody that was interested together and let them talk to DoD. The surprising thing was not that the DoD showed up and sort of said why this is important and all that kind of stuff. The surprising thing was at the end of their conversation, they said, hey, you in industry, figure it out. They dropped the mic and they walked out. And so a couple hundred of us there and a couple more hundred streaming said, that's interesting. We've never sort of seen that before. I stood up and said, hey, I know how to get there. I've been there before. Let's go do this. And so a couple weeks later, the Professional Services Council, who was the sort of people facilitating the conversation there in DC, held another meeting. So I took another day off from my day job and drove down from New Jersey to DC again, and sat in the working group that had formed for forming the AB. There was another working group for those that were interested in helping the AB, providing them services and support, and then a third tranche for just people that didn't know what they didn't know. Right? They knew CMMC was important, but they didn't know anything. So there were 25 of us initially in that working group to form the AB. We formed 7 working groups. I led 3 of them. I led the infrastructure, the organizational structure, and the finance working groups for that thing. And the working group leads continued to work and make things happen. And then the working group leads would get together about once a week or so and talk about, hey, where are we doing? How are we doing? What do we need to coordinate, et cetera, et cetera. A few months later, in January, early February timeframe of 2020, we decided to go ahead and form the company. We had not created a company, so we formed as a nonprofit in the state of Maryland, and the working group leads became basically the de facto initial board members. It was a coalition of the willing, and we did that and incorporated and have been working ever since. Then we got a MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the DoD, saying this is what we want you to do to us as the AB, and we said, okay, roger that, and started moving out trying to make those capabilities happen. And recently, I think just a few months ago, maybe November, signed a contract with them, no cost contract with the DoD to solidify sort of what the roles and responsibilities are. So that's sort of all my involvement.
Whew.
That's considerable involvement.
Yeah.
It's been a second full-time job. Absolutely.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, that's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot.
Yeah.
Anything involved with compliance falls, you have to do that massively. And when you throw government into the mix, well, that makes it all the more fun.
Yeah.
So
that's how I would define it. Fun. Yeah.
I've been in conversations before where other people are like, we don't know what the standards are or what we should follow or anything else. And they're like, well, outsiders haven't told us what they want us to do. And I'm like, you guys, they're waiting on us. Waiting on us to say. They don't know what we know. They don't know what they don't know. And they're waiting on us to go, this is going to be a good idea and we should all follow it. Let's go. So, and it's really just goes into, how young the whole industry is as a whole. And then just the movement speed of the technology and the systems and the type of data that we're trying to secure. We're moving so much faster there than what we can physically keep up with.
And generally, legislation and policies will always lag behind technology, right? There's just no way for that kind of stuff to keep up. The DoD, I think, identified this a while ago with the introduction of NIST Special Publication 800 Tech 171, right? That was sort of the initial foray into this.
Yeah.
If you have nothing better to do, Google the US F-35 and then Google the Chinese J-31 and ask yourself why those two airplanes look exactly the same. If we're losing, approximately 600 billion with a B dollars of intellectual property each year to our adversaries, we've got to turn that spigot off. And that's really what NIST 171 was designed for. But over time, I think the DoD realized that it was not as effective as it could be, mainly because there was no teeth in it, right? You could sort of, pencil whip, the forms and get it done. You could make a POAM for all kinds of capabilities that you should have, but you didn't have, and it was acceptable, et cetera, et cetera. There were a lot of issues with 171. And I think that's what the genesis of CMMC was, okay, let's turn this on let's put teeth in it. Let's make it mandatory for people to have, get awarded the contract, even though I think eventually it will be at time of bid. Once everybody gets their CMMC certification, you won't even be allowed to bid on contracts without that. But since nobody has it right now, we're just going to do it at time of award. You have to have the CMMC certification by the time the contract's awarded. So I think it's been a known problem, and they tried to, sort of do it once with maybe a soft glove, and now the hammer's coming out.
So can you kind of walk us through what some of the steps would be for a DoD contractor to become accredited and be certified?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing I would say to anybody that's currently a government contractor is you already have cybersecurity clauses in your contracts, and you should be doing this, right? If you're a smaller sort of company, maybe it's a DFARS clause that is frankly equivalent to CMMC level 1. Excuse me. If you're a little bit more advanced on the scale, you probably have a NIST 171 requirement, which is almost equivalent to CMMC level 3 with the addition of 20 new practices plus a maturity side that has not been sort of in the 171 world at all yet. So you should be doing all those things already, right? You are probably attesting to the government that you are doing those things and you are in compliance with them, whether you are or whether you are not. But if you are, it's a very easy stretch then to go from a 171 to a CMMC level 3 assessment. Very little time, effort, and frankly money will be involved in getting you there to meet CMMC level 3. If you have not been doing that, it's going to be a very interesting journey for you as you get all these capabilities that you should have been doing all along. So that's the first thing, is if you have those contracts, you have those clauses, do that stuff is the first step. So right now the DoD has listed out about 12 or 15 contracts that they think are going to have the first CMMC requirements on it. If you think you're going to be in the bidding process for those contracts, then CMMC is certainly in your very near future. We can expect DCMA DIDCAP to assess not only the accreditation body, but also the C3 PAOs, the CMMC third-party assessment organizations, to make sure, to make sure they can protect the data that they're going to be collecting. Right, system security data for all these companies, and once that happens, then we expect assessments to start. So companies will say, yes, I want to bid on contract, A, B, or C that the DoD has nominated for CMMC requirements, and then you will come get assessed. What can you expect to happen is you will contract as the company with a C3 PAO. The DoD and the accreditation body are not involved in that process. You'll say, hey, I need to be assessed, 2 weeks from Tuesday, whatever the case is. You'll do all that kind of negotiation. You'll probably define the system scope, which is probably the most important thing you will do pre-on-site assessment, is try to figure out what that scope is. Is it this one system, like a PCI DSS kind of assessment, or is it going to be the entire enterprise? Those kind of decisions have to be made well before the assessor gets on site. You'll do all the pre-homework stuff. So, the assessor may say, hey, can I see your system security plan, or can I see your SOC 2 type 2, or whatever it may be. There will be a number of artifacts, I'm sure, that will be passed back and forth as the assessor tries to gain some insight as to what you're doing and how well you're doing it before they get on site and actually start doing the assessment. Just typical audit stuff. There's nothing really new there if you've been through any kind of audit before. And then the assessor will show up on site. You'll have to host them and give them opportunity to see your systems, talk to people, interviews, all those kind of things. The examiners have 3 arrows in their quiver that they're going to use to assess you on. Interview, test, and examine are those 3 arrows. And so they have to pass 2 of those 3 to sort of mark you as passed on a practice. So if, for instance, you have to encrypt CUI, they may interview you and you say, yes, we do it, and we have a policy that does it, and blah, blah, blah. And then they may want to actually go see it happen, or they may want to test it and send something through and see if it gets encrypted, whatever the case may be. But those are the 3 arrows in the quiver that the assessors are going to use to actually evaluate each practice. And then obviously, as you get a little bit higher in the model, level 2, which we really don't think are going to show up in contracts, it's really a bridging solution between level 1 and level 3 because there's such a big gap there for companies that want to go from 1 to 3. And then level 3, obviously, the process is managed. The maturity process is managed, which means you have a plan for how you're going to accomplish all the practices, and there's 130 of them. And so that becomes a little more onerous on the companies to have that plan ready to go and stuff like that. So there will take time to do some of those things. But like I say, if you're starting from ground zero, it's going to be a very big uphill climb. But you should be starting from a position where you're either applying the DFARS rules that you are already in compliance with to level 1, or you're applying the NIST 171 to CMMC level 3 stuff as you make the transition.
So just for the sake of our audience, because we've got a whole broad spectrum, what we're talking about is compliance, which means taking lists that are out there of known items that to protect a network, to protect a system, to have policies, to find out who has access, who doesn't, and to be able to audit all this and be in control of all this. There's massive lists of preset rules and things to make sure that your systems are in check and that they are doing what they're actually supposed to be doing. That's what all this compliance element is. And then you have to be assessed to make sure that that's happening. And for a long time in the public sphere anyway, some of the big challenges have been lots of companies, lots of places aren't really up to standard. And also now some of the big changes is our auditors are getting a whole lot smarter about not being hoodwinked. And so are you coming across some of that in the government area too, to where the auditors are getting smarter, they're getting better at assessing well to make sure that things are actually secure, because that's the overall goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When we opened the provisional training program up to train the first sort of group of assessors, we were very methodical on their education, background, experiences, certifications, et cetera, to make sure that they were the cream of the crop, right? Because these were going to be the first assessors out the doors. You can't be a subject matter expert in all areas. There's just too much out there, and it changes too rapidly to do that. But you need to have the really big picture understanding of what needs to happen, and you need to be able to communicate that to a company that either may not have any cybersecurity experience at all, so you got to translate into business speak, or B, has some really good and talented cyber folks that will know more than you, right? And so that's why we sort of picked those people specifically to be in the provisional program, is because we wanted as high a caliber assessor that we could get sort of coming out of the gate. Because if they could do a good job, it sets the program up for success. Eventually we're going to train thousands of people, and you're going to have bad apples, right? It's a microcosm of the society we're going to pull through, so we're going to get good, bad, and ugly. And we'll try to do the best we can to sort of eliminate that from happening through a number of checks and balances we've got installed for the training. But yeah, that's why we picked the provisional instructors the way we picked them, was to bring a very high quality assessor to the fight.
And that's an impressive undertaking. So just to kind of recap here, a lot of that wasn't in place. The Department of Defense just said, figure it out. And you folks took up that challenge and helped set that standard, because as you said, we need to defend against our adversaries, because there's a lot of people who really want this country to fail in many areas, and that has to be changed. So first of all, thank you, sir, for your service and what you're doing, and to take on this very difficult task. I mean, it's not something you'd want to do on a weekend vacation.
Yeah, so it's all I've been doing every weekend since probably November of 2019.
I'll bet. Yeah, that's there's already a lot of stuff you've said here that I can tell already. I'm sitting here and I'm gonna go back and like rewatch my own recording like 6 or 7 times and hit the pause button, and then be real sad when I don't hit it fast enough, and like just all kind. Okay, so as an assessor, is there a cost associated with becoming an assessor? Because I don't know. I have no idea on that side of it, right? Like cybersecurity, you got to pay for certs. Sorry, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, so that is the sort of the ISC squared, or the ISACA model is basically the model we chose to follow when it came to certifying the assessor. So yeah, there is a cost for the training. There is a cost for the exam. Typically, I think we combine that into one cost, like many people do. And then once you've sort of been stamped, as official, then there's CPEs you're going to need to maintain to keep your knowledge base up, as well as sort of an annual maintenance fee that you would pay the AB to sort of be in good standing, kind of thing. Even as a nonprofit, we still have to have money, right? We have to have money to pay for our systems. We have to have money to pay for our employees. Everybody that was on the board or is on the board, it was all volunteers for them, so there's no compensation to the board members. But we now have, I think we're up to 4 employees, and those people are drawing a paycheck, right? So we have to get that money from somewhere, and so that's one of the ways that we tend to raise revenue, is through those, it's kind of annual maintenance fees. But yeah, it's very similar to either an ISC squared or an ISACA certification model is what we chose to follow.
So let me see if I understand this correct here, because when you're in the public sphere, and again, for the audience at large, there's several different standards of these checklists, these compliance elements that you have to go by. And they arrange everything from PCI, which he mentioned just a little bit ago, which is the payment card industry, to the NIST, very common 853 is a huge list that a lot of folks have to, and then there are international standards like the ISO 2700, those types of things. So if you want to get into compliance, and you know that, and then there are efforts that try to find similar compliances, because many industries have to meet multiples of those. And so in a lot of those, there's different groups that help to certify that. But it's sounding like yours is the only group in town for the DoD. Is that correct? I mean, does anyone who wants to do anything with the DoD have to go through this group? How does that work? Has the government just said, nope, that's the only stamp of approval? Is it like PCI?
That's basically what the government said. They said once the AB stood up, formed a company, got a board of directors, all that kind of stuff, signed the contract, then we are the official, I guess, provider of CMMC services to the DoD. And so anybody that's in the ecosystem is going to have to go through us or one of our entities to make that happen. So for instance, I said before, when you're a DIB company, defense industrial based company, and you want an assessment, you're going to work with a C3 PAO. Well, we approve the C3 PAOs and make sure they're capable of doing that kind of stuff. And we train the assessors that they're going to be using to actually conduct the assessment. But the contracting vehicle between the C3 PAO and the DIB company is completely up to them. That's market driven. We're not involved in that. But we're going to make sure the people involved in that ecosystem are up to snuff and capable of doing it at the level we think it needs to be done at.
Yeah, I was going to ask for the assessors as a tool, right, to go through the audit. I've seen 3 third-party ones like pop up, and I just wondered how they compare or where people could find the resources, like what that checklist looks like, or what anything we can share out as far as a .org or .com or whatever.
Yeah, the model's been out for a while. If you go to the AB's website, which is www.CMMC-AB.org, you can take a look at it. There are documents there that are published by the Department of Defense. The model is published by the Department of Defense. Feel free to read that. Feel free to fall asleep while you're reading that. It's not too entertaining. But that tells you everything you need to know. Now, we have taken that and turned it into what the assessors need to look at, right? So if it says you need to have encryption of controlled but unclassified information, CUI, then we tell the assessors how to go look for that and how to assess that, whether the company is doing it right or wrong kind of stuff. But those kind of things are out there. We're creating the AB is creating a data standard. So anybody that wants to create a tool set for the ecosystem, as long as it meets the data standard, and can be ingested by all the parties and used and shared, we really don't care what the tool looks like, right? Anybody can create that tool. So we're working through that. Right now there's either you can make your own or you can go find somebody that's made theirs and pay for that. But there's really nothing the AB has put out that talks about, this is the checklist you should use.
Gotcha. Okay. I had a question.
That's very similar to 171 as well as 800 TAC 53. The government typically does not say, here's the step-by-step process. Some other third party sort of creates that.
Gotcha.
Then what's your oversight?
So the AB's oversight is basically to make sure that the training is correct with the model, that the standard is correct with the model, that everybody in the ecosystem is trained and ready to go to do that right, and then quality assurance and quality control over the process.
Yeah, but is there a body that you have to report to, or that does the DoD step in and say, okay, are you doing this well, efficiently, properly, etc.?
Yeah, the DoD has created a PMO, a project management or program management office that we work with to make sure the CMMC program is going the way the DoD thinks it needs to go.
Gotcha. Interesting. That's a huge effort, dude. That's incredible.
That's a lot of stuff. Yeah, whenever you told me yesterday that you'd stepped off the board and were concerned that I was like, no, you still seem like the exact expert I want to talk to. So thank you for being more than accommodating to that.
Yeah, like I said, the fact that I've decided it's time for me to go do something else and let the board go on and do their things. It has nothing to do with my knowledge of the program. Obviously, at some point here, I'll get pretty stale in terms of new things that are happening, but that probably won't happen for at least a couple days.
Yeah, I figured it wasn't going to happen in like a 24-hour span. I was like, no, this is fine.
So how effective do you feel the compliance is, or compliance in general, maybe, beyond yours, as far as actually producing the type of security that we need? I understand compliance, is a step in the right direction. You've got to meet this checklist, basics, but is it as effective as we need? And the other answers?
Yeah, certainly compliance is a necessary but not sufficient step. in the process, and there's no such thing as perfect security, and there's no such thing as zero risk, right? And so when we evaluate that, really what we're trying to do is this is why you put a cactus outside your bedroom window, right? So the bad guy goes, ooh, a cactus, I don't want to break into that window, I'm going to go to the house next door. You want to make your cybersecurity tough enough that the bad guys give up and go to the next target, right? If you're facing an advanced persistent threat that's got time and resources and money, there's nothing you can do, right? There's literally hardly anything you're going to be able to do to prevent that bad actor from getting in, probably. Just that's the nature of the way computers work. But what we want to do is eliminate a lot of the riffraff, a lot of the small stuff that people just, I want to spend time breaking into this company, but after a couple hours or a couple days, I realize I'm not going to do there easily, so I'm going to move on to the next target. But yeah, certainly compliance plays a role, but there's more to it, compliance, because we could be perfectly compliant with a control, and the bad guys can find a way around that control, and now we're no longer secure. And so that's why I would say that compliance is a necessary step, but is not a sufficient step.
Yes, that's going to be a quote later. That's going to be the one. Yes, definitely. I mean, all of us in InfoSec have either been a part of or interfaced with or done business with companies that are like, well, but I'm compliant.
Well,
right?
Think about driving, right? You could drive the most compliant car from safety issues with whatever the NTSB standard is, right? Everybody around you could be perfectly compliant with the rules of the road, yet accidents happen. And so what do? You usually have car insurance, right? Because you cannot, totally eliminate all that risk. And so you transfer that risk to an insurance company. Cyber's like anything else. There is no such thing as perfect security. There's no such thing as zero risk. So you have to take, mitigating and compensating controls into effect and do the best you can.
I like that analogy, just because immediately I started to think about all the people I know that have driver's licenses that I question how they got them.
Exactly.
So I know we're coming up on time, but coming from a community college viewpoint, right? If you were to talk to a brand new student who is getting into the realms and was thinking about compliance along those lines, what would be the advice that you would give that student, the best direction for them to take, and what would be some of the potholes that you've learned in life that you would give them advice on?
Yeah, the biggest thing for cybersecurity in specific terms is the breadth and depth of knowledge you need across almost all IT stacks, right? It's the entire OSI model, if you're familiar with that. And so you rarely see people coming right out of any, basic education system, whether it be community college, 4-year degree, even a master's or postgraduate degree, that's got that breadth and depth that's required to understand that if I wiggle something over in the operating system, what wiggles on the application side or the network side or the cases. And so people end up going into IT and they specialize in a silo, right? They're a developer, they're an administrator, they're a networker, whatever the case is. And that's okay, but that's not what you need for cyber. You need to have that whole breadth and depth of experience. And the only way you're going to get that is to study yourself. It's got to be sort of a self-driven thing that, yes, I want to go into cyber for whatever reason, and then you're going to study and make it happen. And so while you may be taking a class on databases, maybe you're reading up on Python scripting on your own because you understand that that's going to be an important part of, doing stuff, with the operating system at some point in the future. So I would say self-study, self-development is probably the biggest one. I encourage people all the time to volunteer. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to anybody that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free. I'm happy to do that. But, there's opportunities to volunteer for a church or a nonprofit or something and do their cybersecurity for them. Well, you don't have to be perfect, just go in and help, and you're going to find things that you don't know about, and Google becomes suddenly your best friend. Figure it out. Right. OSCP, if you're familiar with them, the offensive security professional, their mantra is try harder. Right. And so, if you don't know something, try harder, go in and figure it out. Let's do some self-learning. So that would be my biggest thing. When I hire cyber people, typically people on my team sort of do the technical analysis. Are they good from a technical point of view? My questions are two. One, do they fit into the chemistry of the team? And number two, are they curious? That's really what I'm more concerned with. If they have the curiosity, then they're going to go figure that stuff out on their own. I don't mind coaching, mentoring, and helping. That's sort of my job as a leader, I think. But at the end of the day, if that person goes, well, what happens when I do this, and they can't get in and figure it out, then they need to be able to figure those things out by themselves, because we're just moving at too high of a pace to sort of stop and try to do those kind of education things all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well done. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. So everybody heard that. Go pester Chris.
Yeah, there you go. Should start charging a quarter for all this stuff is what I should start doing.
Or that. Yeah. Well, I mean, this will be a recording now. So whenever you get the question, you can just link them this from the YouTube and it'd be like,
Yeah, I never thought I would say when my daughter said, "Dad, I Googled you on YouTube." I'm like, "Oh boy, this is not going to be good." So yeah, there's a number of these videos out there that I guess, I don't know if I'm trending or whatever that means, but you can certainly look for my name on YouTube and find these kind of videos. So
Yeah, of course. No, that's great. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. Oh, we almost made time, Will.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
A whole minute over. Well, we look forward to hanging out with you more, and I'm sure everybody else is going to be looking forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn if they're not already. You've got quite a network anyway. So we really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for sitting in and joining. I heard him say, "Go break something." Oh no. Thanks.
Well, I mean, yeah, so my team, we found a sort of an unmanned server at one point. Nobody could figure out what it did or anything like that. Nobody took ownership. So I said, unplug it. Let's see who screams. It happened to be payroll. And so, we found, that's probably not one. So we replugged it in and restarted and got payroll back up and running. But, you got to do those things sometimes,
I've never, you know what? I love that was your approach. That lets me know this is why me and you are friends, Chris, because that would have been my answer to the problem too. Well,
unplug it, see who screams, and then we'll know the owner.
Isn't that an IT motto?
Break it till it screams.
Off and on again.
The OFF button. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thanks you guys and everybody hanging out in the chat. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. And we'll see you next week. We're going to do it again because Will keeps accepting my invitations. So